Good day. I am Dr. Andrea Cristina Baliton Velegaño, and this morning we will be discussing uterine malignancy. So, uterine malignancy refers to cancers that develop in the uterus. The most common types are the endometrial cancer, and the less common ones are the uterine sarcoma. It represents the most common gynecologic cancer in the developed countries. So uterine cancer are divided into the following. Endometrial carcinoma, which is the most common type, composing of 90% of all cases. We have uterine sarcoma, which is rare, but is very aggressive. Carcinosarcoma are mixed tumor with poor prognosis if you are diagnosed with such. So what are the risk factors for developing uterine carcinoma? Uh, Referring to the figure on the screen, first would be obesity. Next is hormone replacement therapy for those who are post breast cancer who are given hormonal therapy. Early menstruation and late menopause. Polycystic ovarian syndrome could also be a risk factor. Or if you have a family history of uterine cancer, in the case of colonic cancer, and then it could be genetic if you have the Lynch syndrome. So endometrial cancer is again the most common gynecologic malignancy. Worldwide, each year, there is 142,000 women are diagnosed with such, and 42,000 women die from this disease. So this is a table showing the risk factors. So we talk about menstrual and reproductive factors, which is associated with endometrial cancer in the presence of an ovulation. Okay, so present of an ovulation or the duration of uninterrupted menstrual cycle is prolonged. All right. So for example, early stage of menarche and late age of menopause are both associated with increased risk. Okay. So classically, again, women with polycystic ovarian syndrome are in an ovulatory state, putting them in a state of unopposed estrogen exposure. No, so it increases the risk of developing endometrial cancer as well. So in particular, the most common one is obesity. So it is the most common cause, endogenous kind of estrogen production. So for premenopausal women, the elevated estrogen levels trigger an abnormal feedback in the HPO axis, which is the hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis. So in the excess of adipose tissue, it increases the peripheral aromatization of androstenedione to estrone. Okay, so clinically, it would result to oligo or anovulation. So in the absence of ovulation, the endometrium is exposed to virtually continuous estrogen stimulation without the subsequent progestational effect. So remember, in the menstrual cycle, when there is already the release of progesterone, there would be withdrawal bleeding. So this does not happen in this case. So unopposed estrogen therapy, we can give patients combined estrogen plus progesterone hormonal therapy. So the effectivity remains questionable, but then again, the combination therapy is at preventing endometrial cancer uh, pertaining to the unopposed estrogen factor. No? So we can give the combined because of the presence of the progesterone in order to induce withdrawal bleeding. So for those with family history, this is most common extracolonic manifestation of a condition referred to as hereditary non-polyposis colorectal cancer. So for patients who have such, they have a high chances of developing endometrial cancer. So also known as the Lynch syndrome. So they tend to develop the age group would be from 40 to 60%. For this age group, for this group of patients, the chances of having the disease is 40 to 60%. So there is germline mutation or mismatch in the repair of the genes MMLH1 and MSH2. So also you see here we have the BRCA1 and the BRCA2 mutation in cases of patients who have breast cancer as well. So they have risk also because after treatment of the breast cancer, patients are given tamoxifen. So tamoxifen, okay, is used in treatment for breast cancer. So when the patient is given tamoxifen, it causes a threefold higher risk of unopposed estrogen effect. Okay, remember this is um, it is an estrogen component, and remember that the endometrium are estrogen receptors. No, the breast and the endometrium are estrogen receptors. So when a patient is treated for breast cancer and is given tamoxifen, then it has a double bleed effect. No, it treats the breast cancer, but then again, you have to monitor your patient because it increases no, the risk of developing endometrial cancer. The level of risk increases linearly with the duration of the therapy and its cumulative dose. Okay, so all the more we suspect for developing endometrial cancer if your patient on tamoxifen develops vaginal bleeding. Okay, so coexisting medical conditions would include diabetes mellitus, hypertension, and gallbladder disease. All these points to all are associated with obesity. Okay, so we have different types, the type 1 and type 2. The type 1 are estrogen dependent. They are mostly low grade, okay, and derived from atypical endometrial hyperplasia, so the benign spectrum of endometrial cancer. So the type 2 cancers usually have serous or clear cell histology. It is no precursor lesion and are more aggressive clinical course. They have a more aggressive clinical course. So for how do we screen this kind of patients? Okay, at onset of menopause, there should no be bleeding or probably return of menstruation or such. Because once you're menopause, there should be no bleeding after. So the role of routine screening for endometrial cancer for women who are at higher risk would apply to those who have condition referred to as hereditary non-polyposis colorectal cancer. So the screening would start for women who have such, their screening would start at 35 years old. Screening. Okay? So how do you diagnose? We start with the signs and symptoms first. So in premenopausal women, there's history of prolonged heavy menstruation or intermenstrual spotting. Or in layman, we call it abnormal bleeding, abnormal uterine bleeding. We should suspect for endometrial cancer if there's such. So early diagnosis of endometrial cancer is almost entirely dependent on prompt recognition. So the patient should recognize that they're having abnormal bleeding and they should seek medical condition and medical consultation. Unfortunately, some patients do not seek medical attention despite it having months or years of heavy and irregular bleeding. Okay? So in more advanced disease, pelvic pressure and pain may reflect uterine enlargement or an extrauterine tumor spread. Okay, so for some patients who are menopause would have postmenopausal bleeding, or they may have abnormal vaginal discharge. It could be foul smelling, it could be the color could be reddish, brownish, or yellowish. So that should raise suspicion for certain uterine condition. So how else do we diagnose endometrial sampling? No, so we have what we call the office pipal biopsy. It is always preferred for initial evaluation for patients who are with bleeding and you are suspicious of malignancy. This is an office procedure. If you look at the instrument, it is light. It is easy to perform in the OPD, in the outpatient department, and is less painful. So, however, if sampling techniques fails to provide a sufficient diagnostic information, or if the abnormal bleeding is persistent, because basically this procedure, itong biopsy is diagnostic and therapeutic as well. So, but then again, if there is persistent bleeding, we might as well perform the dilatation and curettage to clarify the diagnosis, to have for us to have higher yield of acquiring tissues. Kasi both are blind procedures, but then again, if you do the dilatation and curettage, you have better access to the uterine cavity, no, and the endometrium. So laboratory-wise, we get blood from the patient. A serum CA125 level can be of help, but remember that the CA125 could also be elevated in cases of ovarian cancer, adenocarcinoma of the cervix, endometrium in particular, prostatic, GIT carcinoma, also breast cancer. So preoperatively, this could be of use, no, in an elevated titer indicates the possibility of a more advanced disease. Okay, so pathology. So let us talk about its pathologic aspect. Okay, so these are the different kinds of endometrial carcinoma, and which we'll be discussing in the subsequent slides. There is a broad spectrum of aggressiveness within the histopathologic type, no, different types of endometrial cancer. So the degree of tumor differentiation, no, our uh, friendly pathologist will give us this, is a predictor of disease spread. So effectively managing women with endometrial cancer requires understanding of these interrelated clinical features. Okay, so we'll discuss this in the subsequent slides. So the FIGO classification, no, they divided it into three-tiered system, grading system. Okay, so however, for this grading system, whenever there's presence of nuclear atypia, okay, that is inappropriately advanced relative to the architectural grade, the grade 1, 2, and 3, this raises the tumor grade one level higher. No, if there is nuclear atypia, even if it is a grade 1, okay, but then there's nuclear atypia, it could increase to grade 2. So for the grade 1 lesions, they typically have good prognosis. Grade 2 tumors have intermediate prognosis, and cancers under grade 3 frequently have a poor prognosis and are associated with an increased potential for myometrial invasion and nodal metastasis. So talking about the different histologic type, we start with endometrioid adenocarcinoma. It is the most common histologic type. So when you receive a biopsy result of either it is a curettage or it is post-surgery, your pathologist will give you this different histopathologic report. So the most common one is the endometrial adenocarcinoma. It comprises 75% of cases. So for this one, it contains glands that resemble those of normal endometrium, while a serous carcinoma, it accounts 5 to 10% only. Its histologic appearance resembles epithelial ovarian cancer, and we might see samoma bodies seen in 30% of patients. So these samoma bodies are concentric calcified spheres that appear in various tissues, including the endometrium. It could also be present in thyroid, no? Thyroid carcinoma. So the presence of these samoma bodies in the endometrial biopsy may suggest a metastatic kind of cancer. No? It could be from another site, but if the patient has samoma bodies in the case of endometrial carcinoma, the patient, this finding would say that the patient has a primary uterine serous kind of carcinoma. If you find this endometrial kind, endometrial cancer, you find samoma bodies, it is most likely a serous type of carcinoma. Okay? So grossly, the tumor is exophytic, palabas, with the papillary appearance, emerging from a small atrophic uterus. They usually secrete CA125, okay? And then for this one, uterine papillary serous carcinoma has a known propensity for myometrial and lymphatic invasion. So this, if you get this, these are usually the aggressive cell types, okay? The serous carcinoma. So next would be clear cell carcinoma. Its occurrence is fewer than 5%. So clear cell carcinoma have abundant clear cytoplasm owing to the high glycogen content and have varied growth patterns such as solid or papillary with exophilic and hobnail cells. So please refer to the picture on the slide. So microscopically, the hobnail cells have a clear or eosinophilic cytoplasm and the nuclei are located at the apical or outer surface of the cell, giving the cells a protruding or a hobnail appearance. So these are usually high grade, deeply invasive, and is posing poor prognosis. Okay, so that is clear cell carcinoma. Remember, clear cell, hobnail cells, so these are all associated, no? So there's high glycogen content, so the nuclei are locally located apically. So those are your things that you have to look at. Next would be mucinous carcinoma. It is about 1 to 2%. It has mucinous appearance, as the name would imply. The glandular pattern with uniform columnar cells and minimal stratification. So almost all are stage 1, grade 1 lesions with a good prognosis naman, the mucinous type. Okay, we also have mixed carcinoma. When you say mixed, to be classified as mixed, a component must be comprising at least 10% of the tumor. Okay, but then it has no clinical significance. So we also have undifferentiated carcinoma. There's no evidence of glandular, sarcomatous, or squamous differentiation. So the prognosis is worse than in women with poorly differentiated endometrioid adenocarcinoma. Okay? So what is the pattern of spread for endometrial carcinoma? It could be any of this: direct extension, lymphatic metastasis, hematogenous spread, or intraperitoneal exfoliation. So talking about invasion of the endometrial stroma and oxyphytic expansion, it is seen in early cancer. So ultimately, from this one, if it goes unnoticed or disregarded by the patient, it can ultimately perforate the serosa, the cervix, the fallopian tube, even the bladder, extend to the bowel, goes to the vagina, and the broad ligament. Okay? So next would be lymphatic channel invasion. So for the endometrial carcinoma, the lymphatic network draining of the uterus is quite complex. No? And so patients can have metastasis to any single nodal group. No? The periaortic, the common iliac, the external iliac, the obturator. It could be a combination of any of this. It can spread to any of this or a combination of which, of such. Okay? We also have hematogenous spread. So most common in metastasis to the lung, less common to the liver, the brain, the bone, and also the other sides. So most common in the lungs. It's spread. Okay? So how do we treat? We have to know first surgical staging. At your level, you may at least be familiar with it. But for those who would want to go into obstetrics and gynecology after passing your board exam, then you are required to memorize this and be familiar with this because the staging will guide you into the management that the patient would have thereafter because this endometrial cancer is surgically staged. Now, what do you mean by surgically staged? You can only determine its stage when you are able to operate on the patient and you get your surgically and histopathologically staged, no? Whenever there's surgical, gross appearance of the lesion, and then histopathologic, the grading, and the type of endometrial cancer you'll be dealing with. So when you say stage one, it is local within the uterus. No, when you say stage two, it has reached the cervix. When you say stage three, it has invaded the serosa, the adnexa, upper vagina, and the parametrium, and also there's lymph node involvement. With the stage four, there's pelvic wall, no lower vagina, kidney. The kidneys will have hydronephrosis or may malfunction already. And there could be bladder or bowel or distant metastasis for the stage four. Okay, so how do we, after surgery, after you get your histopathologic report, how do you do surveillance for these patients? No, of course, you are done with the surgery. Now you have your histopath and your patients. Some patients would be undergoing some treatments. How do we do surveillance? So pelvic examination every 3 to 4 months for the first 2 years. So you would see your patient 3 to 4 times a year in the next 2 years. Then twice yearly, so meaning every 6 months in the next 3 years. And then after that, so that's after 5 years, no, already. So you may only see your patient at least once a year thereafter, no? So you may use CA125 to measure the the disease, the presence of the disease. We may also do intermittent imaging such as CT scan or MRI for patients who have advanced disease. No, they should also have more frequent follow-up, no, more aggressive monitoring for those who have advanced disease. So we can give your patients chemotherapy in the form of paclitaxel, doxorubicin, or the cisplatin, or the TAP chemotherapy. We call it TAP chemotherapy. It is adjuvant treatment, no, for of choice for advanced endometrial cancer. So for your patients, you see them late, no, already in the disease, medyo not a good candidate for surgery, then we can offer neoadjuvant therapy using these chemotherapeutic drugs. So also we may give radiation. For those who are poor candidates for surgery, we can give primary radiation in cases of exceptionally poor surgical candidate. Okay, we can do intracavitary brachytherapy using the Heman capsule. Okay. So for those who are stage 1 disease or early onset pa lang ng disease, we can offer, no, for those who are desirous of pregnancy, we can offer, no, intrauterine progestational device in the form of the Mirena, which will last for 5 years. The prices now would range from 15 to 20,000. Because of this one, it contains progesterone. So it might revert, no, the endometrial lining back to normal. But then this is only offered to those who are still desirous of pregnancy and does not want to go have surgery and is in the early stage of the disease. So how about talking about desires of pregnancy? We have fertility sparing management. So inherent risk of the disease progression, you should counsel your patient about it. Okay? So fertility sparing management would apply only to those with grade 1 adenocarcinoma or the type 1 tumors. Okay, where there is no evidence of myometrial invasion according to, as you can see in the your imaging modalities, no? Whether it is ultrasound or CT scan or MRI. So stage 1 lang, ino-offer ang fertility sparing management. So hormonal treatment, again, you can give, but there is an inherent risk of disease progression pa din, no, with the hormonal treatment because a definitive treatment should be removal of the uterus. Okay? So for the hormonal treatment comes in megestrol acetate or medroxyprogesterone acetate or tamoxifen and gonadotropin releasing hormone agonist. But then these are used less frequently. Okay, so the patients are monitored carefully, repeated. If they choose to get the conservative treatment, they should be monitored carefully. Dilatation and curettage every 3 months. Okay, to assess the effectivity of the treatment. And then if a lesion does not regress, then definitely hysterectomy and operative staging should be recommended. No, hindi nag-i-improve, ganun pa din, or nag-worsen yung findings ng histopathology, then there's no room for conservative treatment for this. Okay, even if your patient is still desirous of pregnancy. Okay, so that is about endometrial carcinoma. We now move to uterine sarcoma. Okay, so uterine sarcoma, it is a rare but aggressive form of cancer. It tends to grow quickly. Lymphatic or hematogenous spread occurs early for such conditions, and the overall prognosis is very poor. So it originates in the smooth muscle or the connective tissue of the uterus, and it accounts 3 to 7% of all uterine cancers. Okay, we have three types, the carcinomas, the sarcomas, and the carcinosarcomas. Although the later two categories are rarely encountered, they tend to behave more aggressive and contributes to more uterine cancer deaths, yung sarcoma and the carcinosarcoma. Okay, for the carcinomas, it pertains to the leiomyosarcoma. So there is stromal tissue within the endometrium. So there are stromal tumors in the endometrial stromal tumors. No, it pertains to such. For the carcinosarcoma, these are epithelial and stromal. It has epithelial and stromal components, and it refers to the malignant mixed Mullerian tumors, which we will be discussing in the subsequent slides. Okay, so the types of uterine sarcoma, again, it's the leiomyosarcoma, which is the most common and aggressive type. We also have endometrial stromal sarcoma, can be low or high grade. We also have the undifferentiated sarcoma and the mixed Mullerian tumor. Okay, so what are the risk factors? Again, age, no, postmenopausal women, those who have history of pelvic radiation therapy, genetic factors, association with other conditions such as leiomyomas, nagmalignant transformation siya, and then the chronic excess estrogen exposure. So what are the clinical features of this condition? The symptoms, let's start with symptom. Abnormal uterine bleeding, okay? Pelvic pain or pressure, seemingly enlarged uterus, or a foul-smelling discharge. Okay, a foul-smelling discharge could either be from uterine malignancy or a cervical malignancy. So diagnostic challenges, they're often misdiagnosed as fibroids or other benign conditions, itong mga sarcoma na ito. So how do you diagnose? Imaging, ultrasound, MRI is the most accurate. CT scan is used for metastatic evaluation. A PET scan is used to monitor once a patient has completed treatment. Okay, so unresectable tumors can be identified preoperatively using these modalities, and extrauterine metastasis may be visualized prior to treatment by using this, by looking at the radiologic findings of these modalities. Okay, again, biopsy, endometrial biopsy or a curettage. So the histopathology is a definitive diagnosis. by doing the tissue examination, they will give us a specific kind of malignancy we are dealing with. Okay, so classified broadly into pure and mixed tumors. No, for the WHO has given us this classification. So let's start with leiomyosarcoma. It is the most common aggressive form of uterine sarcoma comprising of 30 to 40% of cases. So it arises from smooth muscle cells in the uterus. So it is rapidly growing. It metastasizes early, again, usually in the lungs. So it presents in the early 50s. And then these leiomyosarcoma are often diagnosed when it is already advanced stage. Okay, so this is the diagnostic criteria histopathologically. So in histopath, they will see mitotic index. They look at the mitotic index and the degree of atypia in order for them to diagnose sarcomas. Okay, histopathologically, a photograph. This photograph on the left shows a gross specimen of the tumor, while the photograph on the right shows a leiomyosarcoma. So in contrast to leiomyosarcomas are cellular with nuclear atypia and there is increased mitosis. Okay, so another kind of uterine sarcoma is endometrial stromal sarcoma or the ESS. It arises from the stroma or in the connective tissue of the endometrium. It can be either low grade or high grade. So the low grade, it is indolent, slow growing, and less likely to spread. So in contrast to the high grade, it is more aggressive with higher chances of metastasis. So high grade undifferentiated sarcoma is believed to be more accurately reflect those tumors with definite endometrial stromal type. For this one, the revised classification in the recent literatures, the distinctions are not determined by the mitotic count, but rather the features such as nuclear pleomorphism and necrosis. It should be necrosis. So microscopically, endometrial stromal sarcomas resemble stromal cells of the proliferative phase endometrium. So recall your basic lectures in pathology, how a proliferative phase endometrium would look like. So photomicrograph of the endometrial stromal sarcoma. So the photo on the most left, these are endometrial stromal cells infiltrate the myometrium, while the photo on the middle, the tumor often plugs the uterine vasculature and is CD10 positive. So on the photo on the extreme right, no, upper right, is a CD10 immunohistochemical marker of normal endometrial stroma, no, CD10. Next would be the undifferentiated sarcoma. It is rare, poorly differentiated tumor that lacks specific histological features. That's why it is undifferentiated. So it often presents with non-specific symptoms also. Its aggressive behavior, it has a tendency to metastasize quickly. It is larger and more polypoid. Okay, the prognosis for this one is poor with high recurrence rates even after aggressive treatment. No? So the undifferentiated type. So microscopically, the cells are larger and more pleomorphic. There's presence of marked cellular atypia, which is a characteristic of this condition. These tumors lack specific differentiation and bear no histologic resemblance to an endometrial stroma. So ganito talaga ang mukha niya. It does not bear resemblance to a endometrial stroma. Okay? So next would be mixed Mullerian tumor or the carcinosarcoma category. So a tumor containing both malignant epithelial and mesenchymal or the sarcomatous components. So it is composed of both carcinomatous in the form of endometrioid adenocarcinoma and a sarcomatous in the element of leiomyosarcoma. Kaya nga mixed siya, no? It is high grade, aggressive, spreads quickly, more seen in postmenopausal women with an average age of 65 years old. So the tumor is sessile or polypoid or bulky, necrotic, and often hemorrhagic. Okay? The prognosis is poor with high recurrence rate and early spread to other organs, particularly the lungs as well as in the abdomen, local spread. Okay? Microscopically, malignant mixed Mullerian tumor. Both glands and the stroma are malignant, have an admix of epithelial and mesenchymal differentiation. Okay? So, mixed Mullerian tumor. Similar to carcinosarcoma, this tumor has carcinomatous and sarcomatous component, but with more variable behavior. No? So less common but typically aggressive, bleeding, pain, abdominal mass is felt. So the prognosis depends on the type and the grade of the sarcomatous component. Okay, so the next one would be adenosarcoma. It has a benign epithelial component and a sarcomatous mesenchymal component. So it may develop in women of all ages. So grossly, the adenosarcomas grow as exophytic polypoid masses that extend into the uterine cavity. So microscopically, isolated glands are dispersed throughout the mesenchymal component and often are dilated or compressed into thin slits. So its pattern of spread for the carcinosarcoma are characterized by aggressive growth pattern, no? Early lymphatic or hematogenous dissemination, and rapid disease progression despite the treatment. So it also compared to the malignant mixed Mullerian tumor. Compared to the endometrial stromal sarcomas and the adenosarcomas, they may have indolent growth pattern with there might be long disease-free intervals, but then it would manifest still later on. Okay, so the staging, again, be familiar with this. This is again surgically staged. So you just review on this, okay? So the management and the treatment is either surgical, chemo, or radiation therapy. The highest chance of cure is achieved by complete surgical resection of a tumor. So a modified radical or a radical procedure may be required occasionally if there is parametrial invasion. So the extent of surgical staging with infracolic omentectomy, you remove portion of the omentum and random peritoneal biopsies are also advisable. Okay, so chemotherapy used post-surgery or in advanced stages using, example, the doxorubicin or the ifosfamide. We can also offer radiation therapy to these patients for local control in selected cases. No, yung mga earlier stages, you catch it earlier in order for us to control the spread. Okay, surveillance. So the same with endometrial cancer, uterine cancer needs also surveillance. No, once surgically treated for stage 1 patients should have physical examination every 3 months for the first 2 years. Okay, so the same. Then 6 to 12-month intervals thereafter. So depending on the type, a chest radiograph every 3 to 6 months for 2 years, and then annually may be required. So again, if your patient needs fertility sparing management, you should tell your patient that it is risky not to perform a hysterectomy for uterine sarcoma in most patients, even if the margins are thought to be negative. No, so if your patient would choose to have fertility sparing management, then you should these patients must meet the criteria. no, the criteria for fertility sparing management, because again, I like to emphasize that removal of the uterus is warranted for this case. So if this you would choose fertility sparing management, then egg retrieval is or an assisted reproductive technology must be applied for these patients. Okay. So, but then again, if the disease is advanced already, fertility sparing management is not a reasonable option to your patients. You should be able to convey that to your patients, no? All right. Your patient must have very good counseling in terms of managing their condition. Okay. So again, the prognosis is poor, especially for high grade or the metastatic disease. And then prognostic factors include the tumor grade, as mentioned in the previous slide, the size of the tumor, and the stage at the time of diagnosis. So recurrence is common even after an aggressive treatment. So dapat alam nyo ng patient nyo. Kina-counsel nyo sila about it. Okay? So the overall survival rate of uterine sarcomas in all stages. So malignant mixed Mullerian, 35% survival, 5-year survival. The leiomyosarcoma, 25% survival in the next 5 years. For the endometrial stromal sarcoma, 60%. No? So the better survival rate in the next 5 years. But then if it is a high grade undifferentiated sarcoma, it would go down to 25%. So leiomyosarcomas have the worst prognosis, no, and are followed by malignant mixed Mullerian tumor and high grade undifferentiated sarcomas. Okay, so in conclusion, uterine sarcoma is rare but aggressive if you get this cancer with a poor prognosis. Okay, early diagnosis and comprehensive treatment is very crucial for this condition. And then there's still continued research and improved diagnostic methods are needed for this kind of carcinomas. Even the diagnostic procedures, the ultrasonographic appearance, it's still in the process of, being studied upon. So I think that's the last of my slide. Okay. I hope you were oriented to the different kinds of endometrial carcinoma. You may again look it up in your book if you got mixed up or you were not able to understand quite the different kinds of endometrial and uterine sarcoma. So you can always go back to your book and read it again. The staging, be familiar with it, and you might memorize it. If you wish to go into obstetrics, then you are bound to memorize it. And all the more if you want to go into gynecologic oncology. No, it is a subspecialty of obstetrics where it deals with different carcinoma of the female reproductive tract, encompassing vaginal, cervical, endometrial, uh, uterine cancers, fallopian tube cancers, and ovarian cancers. No, so after obstetrics and gynecology training, if you're so interested with female carcinomas, then you go into gynecologic oncology fellowship training program. Okay, thank you for your kind attention. That is the end of our lecture. Thank you for your kind attention.